Welcome to episode 249 of the Fabulously Keto Podcast. And today I'm talking with Dr. Jay Wrigley. I first heard Jay on a podcast many years ago and thought it would be fabulous to have him on the podcast. It took Dr. Joanne McManamy, my friend, catching him at the low carb conferences to actually get him on. Thanks, Joanne. The way Dr. J explains how hormones influence every part of our metabolism is both fascinating and eye-opening. We all know insulin is a fat storage hormone, but Jay helps us see that other hormones like thyroid, cortisol, and the sex hormones play an equally powerful role in how our bodies gain or lose fat and how we feel day to day. So here's Dr. J's bio. Dr. Jay Wrigley is a functional medicine doctor and a naturopathic physician specializing in metabolic health, hormonal optimization, and weight loss for both men and women. With over 25 years of clinical experience, he helps patients restore energy, rebalance hormones, and reverse stubborn fat gain through a hormonally optimized diet, targeted all natural supplementation, and bioidentical hormone therapy. Dr. Wrigley is known for cutting through mainstream myths and offering practical root cause solutions for thyroid health, perimenopause and menopause, low testosterone, and more. So let's go and hear from Jay. Welcome, Dr. Jay, to the Fabulously Keto Podcast. It's fabulous to have you with us today.
Jackie, I'm so glad to be here.
And we always start with, where in the world are you?
These days, I'm in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, after living the last 7 years in the Dominican Republic. And so I've been, we'll touch on that part of my history, that the last 10 years, I have built my practice out online, and I'm kind of a digital nomad who moves around and consults with my patients worldwide every day from whatever location that I'm in. And it just happens to be Mexico right now.
Love it. I love it. It's great. And are you originally from the US?
I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina in the United States, where I spent 29 years practicing clinically. I opened up Charlotte's first integrative medical clinic back in 1995. We had numerous practitioners from all kinds of backgrounds and specialties: medical doctors, chiropractors, acupuncturists, functional medicine doctors, things like that. And after a period of time, I kind of got burnt out on the whole clinical scene and sold the practice and decided to take a shot at, I wasn't ready to retire. So wanted to see how it would work out if I had a consulting business. And I also have an online pharmacy where I link my patients to after I've done their initial intakes and set up a protocol for them to get their nutritional supplements or bioidentical hormones or whatever we're using in the world of natural medicine to that place. And so it affords me to be able to do this and function anywhere.
Fabulous. I love it. So because I know you are quite an advocate of low carb, depending on the person, I'm sure. How did you come across that originally?
Originally, how I came across that was, so Jackie, I spent the first probably 12 to 15 years of practicing medicine, with my specialty being a focus on women with hormonal issues, and got so involved in that, just let myself go and didn't even know it until one day, too late, woke up and went, what have you done? And I had put on so much weight and thought of myself as understanding and knowing biochemistry as good as anybody, and specializes in hormones, which we all know now is kind of the root basis of if you're having issues with metabolic health or weight gain or things like that. And so I had to go and I went, this is ridiculous. And I went back and had to self learn and teach myself all the myths that I was taught in medical school about nutrition, because I thought I was eating a fairly healthy diet,
Yeah.
uh, following somewhat, the guidelines of, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, not an excess amount of fat, and all this kind of stuff. And it led me down a road with a sharp wake up call of, wow, I need to lose what ended up being 100 pounds.
100 pounds. Wow.
So I began, anyway, I self-taught myself by understanding the chemistry behind what causes someone to be able to readily access body fat and be able to drop that. And why is it that we all have such an issue with that at some point in our life? And I began to put together for myself a protocol of, okay, I need to keep insulin levels low. I need to stabilize my blood sugar. I need to have a really healthy endocrine system, including thyroid function, adrenal function, pituitary function, in my case being a male, testicular function. In teaching myself the hormonal chemistry to fat metabolism, I was able to drop 100 pounds very quickly, actually. I dropped 100 pounds in 5.5 months, which I don't recommend really anybody do.
Yeah.
But in my case, I really didn't do anything drastic or that would have caused me a health problem. I just was really dialed in, and that's what happened. It's a massive shift very quickly, if done correctly, that changes your life. And that. That's why you have a podcast called Fabulous Keto, right? So, I'll stop there and let you kind of ask them.
Yeah. So then were you already specializing in women's hormones at that point?
Absolutely. That was my most of my career until this shift happened that we're talking about right now. And then I added on to branching out my specialty to both hormonal balancing and hormonal health, mainly for peri and postmenopausal women, but then including metabolic health. And that's where I got interested in low carbohydrate eating, ketogenic diets for some people. And then that branched into a whole nother thing of now, that we can talk about, of an understanding of that it's not so much about ketogenic or ketosis. Now it is, if you have a neurological condition, if you have seizures or Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, we would highly recommend that you go on a full ketogenic diet and produce a lot of ketones in your blood. But for most people now, that's not really the goal, is to see how much ketosis you can get into. That's not really necessary at all. But a somewhat low carbohydrate way of eating, now that can change for anybody depending on activity levels, goals, how big they are, and all that kind of stuff. It gets modified for each individual, but it's still going to be a lower carbohydrate diet than certainly the standard American diet, for sure.
Yeah, sure. So I get a lot of women ask me, so they come to me about hormones, and quite often it's because they've been low carb, probably some for years, and then they're stuck in a place of they're still overweight in a way, or they still have, even myself, belly fat. What can they do to change that? Do they need, I guess it depends on what point you are in menopause.
There's a lot of variables there, obviously, and it would be great if myself or any other doctor or whatnot could say, oh, that's just simply do this. It doesn't work that way. It's an individual basis thing. But I can tell you, because your question was very leading into what I have done for almost 30 years now, that where this becomes an issue is that, unfortunately, a lot of women especially make the mistake of getting way too dogmatic about this low carb thing and turn into that carbs are evil and don't dare eat a carb or whatnot, or I will get, if I eat a carrot, I will gain 5 pounds. That's, in your case, if that's the case for this patient, there's something much bigger going on that needs to be addressed, because you're not intolerable of a carrot and it doesn't make you gain weight overnight at all. But what happens, especially in females in this age bracket of somewhere between 45 to 55 would be a kind of a bullseye right there, is going too low carb too long without maybe guidance of how to do that correctly sets you up for multiple problems. Even though our bodies don't necessarily need carbohydrate, because we have a mechanism within us called gluconeogenesis, which can make glucose out of glycogen. The truth is, without a low to modest amount of carbohydrate and done correctly, what will happen is some of the hormonal transitions that take place in the body, and let's first talk about thyroid. The thyroid gland that sits in the base of your throat that runs your metabolism, your metabolic rate, is very susceptible to, if not fed some carbohydrate in the diet, it will not be able to convert what's called thyroxine, which is T4, into its active form, which we call T3, which is triiodothyronine, and then get that into the cell of the body, to the mitochondria, to bring oxygen into the cell to burn fat. So in the presence of no carbohydrate, what's going to happen is the thyroid gland is going to begin to slow down and your metabolism is going to slow down. And this is why I see a lot of women that you're speaking of that come in and go, keto was working great, and then I have just hit a plateau for the last 2 years sometimes. And it's amazing to me. But to sit on a plateau for that long, but keep pushing, I'm going to go harder keto, I'm going to go lower carb, now I'm going to go completely carnivore, now I'm going to do this, all as if carbohydrate was the scenario here that was keeping the fat on them, and only to find out that that didn't work either. And it's because if you don't take care of your hormones first and have optimal thyroid function and optimal thyroid getting into the cells of your body, and optimal, progesterone and estrogen balance, and optimal testosterone. And the big one is to balance out cortisol, this stress hormone that we have coming from our adrenal glands. That is the most beautiful thing that in evolutionary, the fact that we have cortisol keeps us all alive. It's our body's ability that under any stress at all, our body can respond and keep us into a state of what we call homeostasis, and from things falling apart. But too much cortisol released over a chronic period of time because of a low level of chronic stress, and that can be dietary stress or emotional, mental stress or work stress or whatever, family stress, will just put the brake on fat loss, and you'll never lose any weight whatsoever. And until you get, because, and here's the reason why, cortisol was designed as the flight or fright hormone probably 50,000 years ago, when you possibly could have been chased by a large animal. Your body was going to respond with cortisol, which could make you move, aware, quick, get away from danger or whatnot. It doesn't know what's going on in your life at all. To it is a response that we're in danger. And until we're out of danger, I would not in any way give up any stored energy in my body at all. So it to retain all the body fat that you have, because it is not giving up a bit of that, because it doesn't know how long it needs to survive until we're out of danger. So you've got to get the cortisol levels down. You got to get the thyroid functioning properly. You got to get your estrogen and progesterone, in a woman's case, balanced out. In a men's case, it might be that they need more of a testosterone push or something like that. But all of these things come into play, and diet can be the greatest advocate and greatest tool for you, or it can, even in its best intention, be working against you. And I work a lot with people who, unfortunately, the latter is the case, where this was a great idea and it worked for you for upfront for a period of time, and then everything stopped.
Yeah.
And the reason for that has to do with what we were just talking about. Cortisol went up, going, what are you doing? You're not feeding me either enough calories, enough carbs, enough whatever. And I'm going to send off this thing that's going to shut down fat burning, because I think you're endangering us. And so that's, that anyway, that was a
Yeah.
long,
Okay. That
long
makes sense.
answer, but
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. So, Jay, do you think that people always have to test for their hormones before making any changes?
not at all. But again, Jackie, that's a tough one because after 30 years of doing this, I can sit down with a patient and I know how to ask the questions that their answers are going to give me probably more information that I could ever get off of a blood test for sure, because blood test is really poor for testing anything that has to do with hormones. And here's the reason why. Because a blood test is picking up how much hormone you have in your bloodstream, which means that the only reason you would have it in your bloodstream is that it's already been called upon, that it's moving from one place to another, and it's bound by a protein. So you can go do a spot check at this time of day. Jackie had a, let's say, a progesterone level of this certain number. That is not telling you one thing about how much reserve levels do you have of progesterone. Is progesterone getting into the target tissue of your body and being metabolized the way that you want it to? Blood testing is not the way to go for looking at hormonal imbalances at all. Now, there is some really good testing out there that's changing all the time. Right now, kind of the gold standard is to do a urine sample that is then freeze dried and then pulverized and broken apart, looking at the metabolites of how much of this hormone did you break down in a 24-hour period of time. It gives you a great mapping. And some of the companies that are spotlighted in that is certainly at the top of the list is the Dutch test, which anybody can just go to Dutch.com and you can order a test kit. It'll be shipped to your house. You can take this urine sample, you mail it back to them. They will run a mapping of your entire hormonal structure, and it's very good information. It's expensive. It's the one that, is probably $600 in American dollars or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, there are a number of companies now that are doing this same testing who are taking advantage of this. The Dutch people need competition, and we can do that just as well for a lot less money than that. So, and again, I don't know in the UK. Well, I know that you can get the Dutch test in the UK.
Yeah, you definitely can.
I don't know any other vendors that are
Yeah.
doing it, but that would be the gold standard right now of what, if you were really looking for, I want to know exactly what my hormones are doing. You wouldn't want to go with blood. You would want to go with something like the urine sample.
Yeah. So if let's go with women because they're the ones that often get stuck. I don't know why men have different hormonal cycles, don't they? If a woman is, so you just said that if they've been very low carb for a long period of time, this could be an issue. What sort of general advice, and I know you can't advise, but what sort of tips could you give to somebody who might feel that they're listening to this, they haven't been able to shift some weight, they have been very low carb or low carb for a long time? What's some of the things that they might try to see if things shift?
Okay. That's a great question. I would say one would be this. I would never say, and forgive me if I led anybody watching this astray, that, the low carb or keto diet caused your, why it is that you hit a plateau and you can't lose it. But what I would say in reference to diet would be, number one, are you prioritizing protein in your diet? It's the number one macronutrient. And I find a lot of women who have a really hard time, or at least mentally they think they would have a hard time hitting their protein goals, because that needs to be the priority in the diet. It's much more important than hit the protein side of your diet than it is to hit the I'm under 20 grams of carbohydrate a day or something, that's really, really low like that.
Yeah.
So, number one, do you need to up the protein in your diet? Number two, my whole thing, and anybody who follows me knows this very clearly, is that there reaches a time in perimenopause and all the way through menopause for women, where the idea of eating a bunch of fat in your diet makes zero sense whatsoever. And this is my big thing about why it is that you don't hear me, or my patients don't hear me talking about eating a ketogenic diet, because a true ketogenic diet is a very low carb but very high fat diet.
Mm-hmm.
When you are going through perimenopause or into menopause, and your three hormones, your primary drivers of your metabolism, are estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. All three of those are coming crashing down naturally. It's not like you have a problem. That's just the natural cycle of life.
Yep.
Is that after your ovaries begin to decline it because they don't want to have children anymore, then those three hormones in a woman come down pretty hard. First progesterone, then probably testosterone and estrogen follow later. But without the amount of what you had in your 30s of those three hormones, you could never metabolize the excess calories that come in from fat. And there is, again, we talked about this earlier, there is absolutely no reason to try to get extra fat in your diet when you're in peri or postmenopause without the balance of progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone, unless you have, seizure disorders, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, some neurological degenerative function, which the high fat could be beneficial for. But so I see a lot of women that are still eating a low carb but higher fat diet at this period of time. Let's say they're somewhere between 48 and 52 or something like that.
Yeah.
That's a spot where eating a high fat, low carb diet, you're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to lose any more weight. You might feel good, and that's great. And continue that if you don't really care about losing any more body fat. But if you do, you got to get off that program. You got to modify the fat. Not by any means do we want anybody eating a low fat diet, but we don't want them eating a high fat ketogenic diet. We want them to eat what I call a low carb, high protein, moderate fat diet. And what that means, really, of what that looks like when people will ask that question, is a moderate fat diet means do not, for the most part, add any fat to your diet. Meaning that if you're going to eat something like a nice piece of steak, like a ribeye or a New York strip or whatnot, it already has plenty of fat with it. So let it render in its own fat, eat the fat with the protein that it comes with, not cook it in a stick of butter, thinking that I'm doing this beautiful ketogenic thing by soaking my ribeye that's already high in fat in extra fat. You won't burn that fat off before you eat again. And so there's another pitfall that I see a lot. So make sure dietarily that you're prioritizing protein, hitting, somewhere close to, this changes a lot, but if I had to throw out a rule of thumb, a gram of protein per pound. Now, again, we're talking English terms instead of British, but you say that.
American. Yeah.
Heard that. But in America, we would say a gram of protein per pound of lean muscle mass, or what your desired goal weight minus a healthy body fat percentage. So let me paint that so that it's simple for a woman. Again, I can only speak this in American. Let's say that I've got a woman who weighs 180 pounds and she wants to weigh 140 pounds. Okay. So if we take the 140, a healthy body fat percentage for a woman who is not an elite athlete or training for something or whatnot would be roughly 20% body fat. Okay. So if we take 20% away from 140, that's what?
28.
It's 28 off of 40. So it leaves you with what, 112?
Something like that. Yeah.
So ideally, if this is a person who's somewhat active, if they're completely sedentary, we have to change the rules a little bit. But if they do a little bit of something, they walk, whatever, then that would be a great rule of thumb. 112 grams of protein is what you need a day in your diet. And then you make up the rest of your diet with low carbohydrate, high water content, vegetable food first, maybe a little bit of berries in your diet, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit of carbohydrate from really good quality dairy if you can get it in the form of, I prefer fermented dairy. So eating things like, Greek yogurt, that's a good quality, and maybe putting some berries in there, something like that.
Yeah.
So something like that, but you're looking at keeping your carbohydrate intake low, hitting your 112 grams of protein if you're that woman trying to do that. And then the fat, we don't even need to like throw numbers around. It is eat the fat that is attached to the protein that you are eating for the most part. There is room for, if you're going to saute up some vegetables for dinner or something like that, then you need a little bit of fat to cook the vegetables in. So you use a reasonable amount or the minimal amount if you're really needing to lose this weight and you've been plateaued for a long time, and you make really good choices about what that fat is. So your best fats would be, if you can get truly organic pastured butter, that would be great. Ghee would even be better than that because it's taking all the milk solids out of it. Tallow, animal fats like that, even a little bit of lard, but just enough to get those vegetables to taste good and not saturated with a ton of fat. That's the diet that I teach. And I try to get people eventually, even though in the beginning I might start them out on, you might need to run your daily meals through some type of an app for the first part of what we're doing. But my goal is to keep people away from this idea that they need to count things. You don't need to count carbs, calories, or whatnot, even if you do in the very, very beginning. But I want to teach you to get to the point where you don't even need to think about that. You can spot food and go, that's that this much chicken breast right there is 35 to 40 grams of protein. You've got zero carbohydrate in it, and it's minimal fat, so that you can get to the point where you don't have to be counting things, because that'll wash out so many people if they get to the point where this, and I did not, I don't want to have to design my diet for something that's a second job for me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not very good at counting stuff like that. So I'm really not interested. I do it occasionally, and I have done it occasionally. So I know that a piece of cucumber like that is probably around 70 grams. A couple of pieces of broccoli is probably around 70 grams. So what's that? 30,
But
about
also, you get
2 ounces or something.
There's pretty good fiber content there, which kind of gets thrown out because that doesn't count as carbohydrate whatsoever. But anyway, yeah, I agree with you. I mean,
If you get to know
how to not eventually have to count anything.
Yeah. So, because a lot of people talk about high protein, but they're talking a lot higher than, say, 112 grams. They're talking like in the 200s. Is that way too high for a woman?
It'd have to be a big woman.
Or wanting to be a big woman. Yeah.
Wanting to be a big woman. I don't find that there's any use for that, because here's the thing, our body, the good news is, all of this myth around protein hurting kidneys and stuff like that, that's a bunch of garbage. However, there is some truth to it. The one nutrient that our bodies cannot store whatsoever is amino acids. And so your body can only absorb and utilize so much amino acids on a daily basis before that's all going to get kicked out. So I can't think of, unless I'm dealing with a woman who is a bodybuilding elite athlete, who's so much energy expenditure on a daily basis, that would require something like that. It just wouldn't be necessary. It wouldn't be necessarily harmful. And again, I could build a case for, if that would be useful to keep your carbs and your fat at a lower range, then, by all means do it. But there's no extra benefit to take protein up that high. There just isn't. Some
women have been so conditioned to keep protein low, avoid red meat, just have white meat, or even better, only fish. And therefore they struggle to even get to 100 grams of protein, let alone 112.
Right.
Would you say supplementing with a shake, a protein shake of some sort, might be a way to get in some additional protein?
Absolutely. I do that, very, very often for those women who have a challenge with getting enough protein in their diet. There are great ways, and there are really good ones out there. This is kind of a specialty of mine. I'm pretty neurotic about supplementation because there is so much garbage on the market today, and it's all about marketing, and they will sell you anything and tell you that it will do this. It's an unregulated industry where probably 95% of the stuff that you will find in a store anywhere doesn't have any regulation to it. So there's no third-party testing. There's no way of knowing that this has what it says on the label and the amounts that it says on the label, or what the fillers and what the binders and excipients and all that kind of stuff are. But to your question, absolutely. If you need an extra 30 or so grams of protein a day, there are wonderful protein supplements out there by companies that really do care about you. Yeah, I would suggest that you utilize them.
Yeah. So do you have your own protein line, or would you do you have a couple of mates that you might recommend?
Some ones that come to mind are, I really like, make sure I get these right, because my thing is I've had so many opportunities and been approached so much to private label stuff and have my own line of things. And what it's important to me in my work that I do is to let people know that what I do for you and for myself and for my family or whatever is that I do the deep diving and the research to find out the best products by the companies that make stuff mainly just for physicians to use in clinical practice.
Mm-hmm.
Let my patients know what they are, rather than, because that just works for me. If I was selling everybody, if I was private labeling some companies and selling it as Dr. J's, vitamin D3 or whatnot, why would I would make some extra money. I'd rather go, who makes the best vitamin D3? This company right here.
Yeah.
And, that way I'm not tied to them. I'm not getting paid by them. Anyway, what you were asking, Designs for Health is a company that I really trust and believe in. And there's probably 10 on my list that I really believe in. But they make a very great called paleo protein, and it's made from hydrolyzed beef protein. So it's one of the few that is not it's not a milk derived, casein derived protein, that they would call whey, which is, there's some really good whey proteins out there. But if I had my choice to go between a whey protein or a true beef protein, I'm going for the beef protein. So anybody wants to, it's pure paleo protein, I believe, by Designs for Health. And again, I do not know off the top of my head of whether or not they have that in the UK. I know that we can ship it to the UK. I know that there's possibility that you could find it on Amazon UK, but I don't know that for sure because I don't.
Yeah. But people can look it up, and we have listeners all around the world, so Australia.
So adding extra protein if you cannot get it now. But I want to address that issue because I find that so many people are mystified by this idea of how in the world could I get 112 grams of protein in my diet. I can tell you this, if you were to eat a decent sized New York strip steak with 3 or 4 eggs with it,
yeah,
you've just about reached 112. So the idea that you couldn't split that over a day or in 2 meals, or certainly if you're eating 3 meals, but still doing a little bit of intermittent fasting, you can get 112 grams of protein in your diet really, really easily. If you have to maybe expand your palate a little bit, but I find myself some days eating 400 to 450 grams of protein, not because that's my goal at all. I only need probably 150 grams of protein a day.
Yeah.
I love protein. And when I find myself, I love steak, I love eggs, I love sardines. I love these, I love shrimp. I love, and it's very easy to eat a ton of protein in your diet and
Yeah.
not be terribly full. So I would first want them to do that. And then if, hey, I just can't do it, then get a good protein shake.
Yeah. So the person that you described, 180 pounds, probably needs to be 140, therefore 112 grams of protein. I'm standing here thinking, yikes, I need to cut protein down. So I probably get around 130, 140 grams a day.
Well,
But,
this is,
maybe I just need to cut the fat.
let's talk about that. There's two sides to that. And then there's that piece you just brought up, the fat. But here's way, this is where it gets into, you got to find your ideal. And what I'm good at is getting people to, over a period of time of working with them, to find out because I don't know it. I don't know right off the bat what your N equals 1. Where I'm going with that is this. Here's the only thing that I would be concerned about if you only need, let's say 112 grams of protein and you're consistently eating 140 to 150 or something like that, would be that eating too much protein consistently, again, all those things I said in the beginning were true of never going to hurt you, never going to burden your kidneys, never going to cause, half the problems that came up 25 years ago, which are all mythological. But here's the one thing it's going to do if you eat too much of it. It's going to drive gluconeogenesis. So your liver is going to dump glycogen into your body, and there's an insulin response to that. So what you may find is that if you're eating too much protein, then your insulin levels are too high, which is insulin is going to, it's stop fat loss. It's a storage hormone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're eating too much protein and it's causing gluconeogenesis and your liver's dumping stored glucose in the form of glycogen into your bloodstream, insulin's got to respond to that to get that back into the cells of your body to be burnt. And that higher insulin level is going to put the brakes on you losing any body fat. So that would be the one case where maybe you're eating too much protein.
Yeah.
I'd look at that. And then I also would look at maybe you're eating a little more fat than you need. I don't know.
Yeah, probably. So what about, so it sounds like you're very pro meat. I'm very pro meat. And when I say meat, I include fish, so animal products. What about, and I understand that there are people out there that want to be vegetarian or want to be vegan. What would you say about that for them? Would you still encourage to have animal products rather than vegetarian products?
You had to throw that out there, didn't you? Because that's the toughest battle in the world. I want to support anybody in whatever they decide they want to do. But in my work of getting the results that I want for my patients, I find that's the hardest thing about is to work with someone who wants to be either vegan or vegetarian, because we're dealing with, if you're looking to get leaner, more energetic, retain or build some lean muscle mass to better burn fat, cognitive function, all of this, and to try to do that on a almost completely vegetable-based diet, it's almost impossible. Is it impossible? No. It takes a lot of supplementation, a lot of supplementation, but it's doable. But it's something that it's a tough one, because I don't want to talk anybody out of what they have chosen and they have a deep, heartfelt thing about. But I have to be honest with them and go, it is what it is. If you want these results, and here's what we have to work with because of your, whatever your beliefs, choices, whatever it is, then I'm all for giving it a go. But I'm going to be upfront with you that this is going to be a challenge.
It is a challenge, yeah.
It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah. So I've heard recently that if you're having vegetable protein, you need double the amount to actually get. So if you want 112 grams of protein, then you're probably going to have to eat over 200 grams of vegetable protein in order to get your.
I would argue that in a nice way and say, I don't think that you're going to make any headway by eating more of the protein. What I think, hopefully the person who ever pinned that it got distorted somewhere, was really trying to say that you're going to have to eat a much wider variety of protein.
Yeah.
Because the amino acid profile of a vegetarian-based diet in protein sense is, for the most part, incomplete proteins. So we can't call them complete proteins because they're missing one or two amino acids. So you have to eat a huge wide variety of vegetable-based proteins, not necessarily a higher gram content of protein, but much bigger variety so that you get the entire amino acid profile.
Yeah. I agree with that. So what about, so we've spoken about women 48 to 55-ish. What about as they get older, maybe they've gone through menopause? Does it change at that point? Does diet, exercise, all those things need to change in line with what the hormones are doing?
Well, it really depends on whether or not, wow, so many factors. The first thing we would have to establish is this person doing anything actively to support levels of hormonal health that they would have had in their 40s? And really what that comes down to is you're either doing that through some targeted specific nutritional supplementation to support various hormonal pathways. Number two, is your diet enough on point that you're providing your body with enough cholesterol to be able to run these hormonal pathways that are working at such a lower rate, but they're looking for the building block for your hormone production, which is cholesterol always. And this is a whole other thing that we got ourselves into a mess with for the last 60 years of telling people to stay away from cholesterol. That's why everybody's a hormonal wreck, because that's where all your hormones are made, out of cholesterol. So you got to make sure that their diet's on point, they're getting enough cholesterol in their diet, but not eating an excessive amount of fat at menopause. Targeted nutritional supplementation, or are they already involved with the use of bioidentical hormones, which I'm a big, large part of my practice. I'm a big believer in it. I think if you look at the research, again, people got really led down the wrong pathway with the fear of hormonal therapy. There's a big reason to be fearful of the way we got into this mess of feeding women estradiol that came from pregnant mares, horse mares, or that's oxymoron.
Yeah.
But horse urine basically derived estradiol, and then taking that and synthesizing it into a synthetic form in a laboratory and giving it to women started this whole, oh, wow, that provokes breast cancer. But the use of bioidentical hormone, which means hormones that your body recognizes as the exact same estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, whatever, that your body makes and doesn't have any conflict of interest with your body, these are completely safe. Now, there are some times where you don't want to do that with somebody who's got a family history of some things, or presently is dealing with a certain health scare, whatever. But for the most part, there couldn't be anything more safe than true bioidentical hormones, especially progesterone or even estriol, which is one of the three estrogens in your body. So are they are they doing any of that kind of stuff? And all of this modifies each other. So if you're doing hormonal therapy, then it gives you room to be more variety in your diet.
Yeah.
If you're not doing any kind of hormonal based therapy, then you're going to have to really dial into your diet harder, and you're going to probably want to take some nutritional supplementation to support trying to bring your low levels of hormones up a notch so that you feel better, you age better, your skin's better, your energy's better, you sleep better, your anxiety's gone, these types of things. So, yeah.
Yeah. And something so there are people out there that are very pro and very anti iodine. Where are you on, where's your stance on that?
Ooh, again, you're throwing some tough ones because they're big. They're very individually based. I work so much with thyroid problems that the answer to that question is it used to be early on that when I met someone who was taking iodine, I would have this thought of, good for you. You have educated yourself. You know that you've got symptoms that sound like you have a thyroid issue, or somebody's helped you with that or whatnot and recommended iodine. So what went from a maybe first step of I'm trying to take care of myself that has turned into now I have to yank people off of iodine every single day who come to see me for the first time, and they're like, I've got all the symptoms of hypothyroidism, so I've been taking a boatload of iodine every day, and now they have all kinds of problems. And iodine is not going to, here's the thing, it's as simple as this, but I get that it's complicated because not everybody has the testing ability, or I'm not even sure that they need to test it. But what I'm getting at is, here's the problem. If you have a problem with either your thyroid gland or anything else that's related to an iodine deficiency, that is the only thing that iodine's ever going to help. So the idea of iodine, I read an article and it sounds like iodine is really good for you, is very dangerous. Because if you take a woman who doesn't need iodine and put her on iodine, I mean, if you think about how we ablate a thyroid gland, if we're going to like kill it off because it's cancerous or whatever, we're going to use radioactive iodine, right? We're going to kill the thyroid gland and we're going to put them on hormone replacement for the rest of their life, which is awful practice of medicine to me. But what the point is this, they're going to use highly volatile iodine to do this. So the idea that somebody is out there because they read something on social media or they did a Google run and came up with the idea that they should take a lot of iodine, not a good idea. Consult your doctor, consult your physician, or don't do that. Don't go take a bunch of iodine unless you know what you're doing.
Yeah, interesting. So, Dr. J, is there anything else that you feel that we need to cover today that we haven't already covered?
I would just say that I'd leave it on a note of, I really still, amazingly, after this much time, get excited every day about watching people create their own success stories. And what I love is what's available. Let's stay within the demographic we're talking about. I love what's available to women who are making this journey. Maybe let's say first into perimenopause. You're 45 years old, let's say. Could happen at 42, could be a little bit later. Somewhere in there, you get the first hit of, I don't even recognize myself in it. I'm anxious a lot. I don't sleep well anymore. My libido has gone away. I'm not motivated by anything. I just don't recognize this person that I've become. And to watch how that is all so easy to put back into balance if you get ahead of the game and don't wait another 10 years before you get somebody to work with to let them fix this for you or help you. You've got to fix it yourself. But to get the tools and the the information that you need to do this, but to watch these people, to watch all that go away, like really shortly, or the biggest one is why, every single day I work with, one or two new patients along with all my other patients who the big one is this. Dr. Wrigley, what happened to the fact that all of a sudden I'm again 42, 45, and I've picked up 10 or 15 pounds, and I've done this all my life, and all I needed to do was to watch my diet for a couple of weeks, hit the gym an extra session or two, and all of that taken care of, fine, back to where I was. Now, none of that makes the needle move at all.
Yeah.
What's going on here? That's your hormones. That's because of this shift in the hormonal landscape inside of you, and you will not out diet and exercise this. Diet and exercise will make a big difference, and you need to start there and you need to get that ball rolling. But don't be surprised when you find out that that wasn't the only answer, because if we don't get you in hormonal balance, you're not going to out diet and exercise this. And so that's where working with somebody who can give you some tools and meet you where you are. Let's say you don't want to go on bioidentical hormones. Okay, let me show you a couple of nutritional supplements that you could add to your low carb, high protein, moderate fat diet. And here's the sensible way to approach your exercise routine. But with these few supplements I'm going to put you on to support bringing cortisol down, a higher rate of thyroid output, maybe budge your progesterone up a little bit so that we take care of all the anxiety and insomnia, and watch the weight start to melt off.
Yeah.
So anyway, you asked, do anything that we're not touching on. I was saying that I wanted to leave this on a positive note, that all of you women in between 41 and 65 or wherever you are, you can still have that life of your dreams where you're energetic, sleep well, feel great, want to still accomplish stuff in your life.
Yeah. Because you just said, so if you're younger and you're coming to that age, now's a good time to do it. But what about those of us that have gone past that? Is there still hope?
Absolutely. And I hope I didn't say that wrong. It's just that there is like anything else in life, there is an advantage to getting in front of it before it ever becomes an issue, and then you never have it. So I love when I work with a patient who's 38 who goes, I don't want to go through what my mom went through.
Yeah.
And so being proactive at that age and let me set them up on the optimal strategy of how to sail through perimenopause and menopause without the weight gain, without the frustrations, without the anxiety, insomnia, dry skin, the hair falling out, the libido going away. That's a real advantage. But to your point, absolutely, this is all fixable. There's a little bit, you don't have that advantage of, you've never had this problem, some of these issues in the first place, but they're all reversible. And how much time it's going to take in order to reverse them is really about how diligent are you going to be about following a protocol for a period of time. So whether you want to get it all cleared up in 3 months, or whether you've got the next year to turn this around, it's really all about how much effort are you going to put into staying true to what we need to do to get you metabolically healthy, hormonally balanced, and all of that.
Yeah. Excellent. So how can people contact you, find out more about your consultations? Because like you said, you can do it anywhere in the world. So this should be available to anybody who wants to do it.
So really that's as simple as our website will explain all of that to you, of how to work with me and what we do and all of that kind of stuff. And that's Dr. DRJAY Wrigley, my last name Wrigley, like the chewing gum, if y'all remember that, but I'm not related, unfortunately. drjwrigley.com, or you can follow me on pretty much any social media platform. Twitter is where I spend most of my time and where my very large following would be. But all of them, Instagram, Twitter, are at Hormone Diet Doc, DOC. Hormone Diet Doc will get you to all my social media. You can see what I put out there to educate people about this and all the free content that I'm interested in educating people to empower themselves. So
Yeah, fabulous. So we always finish with your 3 top tips, and then maybe the things that you've already mentioned, but what are your 3 top tips you would give to somebody?
Three top tips. I wasn't ready for that, but I like it. It's better when I'm not ready for it, because then it's authentic, right?
Yeah.
3 top tips. I'm going to try to do this in order of priority. So number 1, gratitude. Be grateful. Every morning, you should wake up and pull out a journal and write down 3 things that you're grateful for in your life. And then try to focus on those things that day. Number 2, prioritize protein. Always prioritize protein in your diet. It's the king of all macronutrients. If you're looking to get leaner, metabolically healthy, hormonally balanced, all of this, prioritize protein in your diet, and then let the other 2 kind of know that you should eat somewhat on the lower carbohydrate side. And if you're between 40 and dead, you should eat a moderate fat diet, not a high fat diet, not a low fat diet, a moderate fat diet. And then number 3 would be exercise. I mean, learning how to, that this body was meant to move and you need to move it. It's all the things that you've read about, and the hardest thing for all of us sometimes to get motivated about, but it's all the truths that have ever been written about. It's the number 1 thing that if you could take a pill for, it sets the stage for everything, is to move the body. And that doesn't have to look like anything particular.
Yeah.
That doesn't go to the gym and be a weightlifter. It doesn't mean anything particular. Find what you like to do: yoga, Pilates, strength training, run hills, just
Dance.
go for long walks, dance, ride a bike, whatever, but move your body, because without movement, the body doesn't work right.
Yeah. And I would add to that it's not just once a day. You don't just, I've done my movement today, I can be sedentary for the rest of the day. It's, keep moving your body. You do need to move your body. We were made to move. We didn't stand around. I'm standing, I always stand, but we didn't sit around in houses on pieces of furniture because we didn't have them. So we were meant to move, run, walk.
Absolutely. That's what all these joints are for. That's why we have them. So utilize them and let them serve you well.
Yeah. Jay, thank you very much for being with me today.
Jackie, this has been great. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was such a fascinating conversation with Dr. Jay Wrigley. I love how he brings such clarity to the way our hormones influence every aspect of health, from metabolism to energy, mood, and fat loss. It really got me thinking about my own balance of protein and fat. I do eat fatty meat, but I don't tend to add much extra fat when I cook or to the food itself anymore. What Jay said about keeping fat moderate and prioritizing protein makes a lot of sense. It's such a good reminder that we all need to keep checking in with what our bodies need at different stages of life. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I'd love you to share it with someone who might find it helpful too. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Disclaimer. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Our guests, whether healthcare professionals or not, are sharing their personal opinions and experiences. This does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional before making changes to your medications, treatment, or lifestyle, particularly if you're on medication or have concerns about your health.